So obviously there's the report, the report from the Education Endowment Foundation, which is grounded in evidence. The recommendations are grounded in the evidence available. The last major study that I was involved with was one funded or led by European SchoolNet. That was called Edtech, Innovative Technologies for an Engaging Classroom. And it was actually the precursor to the Future Classroom Lab. And the Future Classroom Lab does conduct a number of various studies. So that's, looking at the European SchoolNet website and the Future Classroom Lab website. It's a very useful, very practical and accessible way of looking at the evidence, because all of their work is focused on teachers, schools, and the use of technology. So, and across Europe. So it's sort of interest to many people. So the Edtech project that I worked on was a 4-year project, and it was really about learning design and about how to scale up the use of technology in the classroom. So we came up with a process whereby, and it was we didn't call it co-production, but it was collaborative. We worked with teachers to establish this process, and started with a scenario of how you might be using the technology in the classroom, and they broke down into what we called learning activities. And the learning activities would be, what was the learning objective, what was the pedagogy behind it, and what kind of technology could you use to support that. And there might be lots of those built together to put the scenario into practice. And that involved huge numbers of teachers across 20 different European countries. And we didn't look at the impact on students' attainment, because that was problematic when you were conducting a project of that nature across so many countries with so many different regulations and ways of assessing learning and so on. But we did gather students' perceptions and teachers' perceptions about the impact. And the teachers certainly felt that they had improved their digital skills and increased the use of technology in the classroom. So, it did sort of go some way towards reaching its aims. And then the Education Endowment Foundation, of course, do a lot of randomized controlled trials. It is tricky to identify the ones that are focused on technology, but they do, in the report that I contributed to, they do list some of the projects. And for each one, they identify how many months additional progress the intervention contributed to when it was put into practice in the classroom. So that's quite a useful source to look at. And it's hard to point people to anything particular, because there are so many different ways, so many different technologies, and so many different ways in which those technologies could be put into practice. But one of the things I would say is that a couple of the journals that publish articles just on the use of technology and learning do try and make things more accessible. So the British Journal of Educational Technology starts each article with some practitioner notes summarising what we knew about things already, and what that study contributes and what the findings are in a very accessible way. And Computers in Education also starts an article by having some easily accessible highlights from the article. So you don't have to then try and work your way through sometimes dense journal articles and so on. So that's quite a good source. And then the Chartered College in the UK in 2019 had a special issue on EdTech, and there's a huge range of different articles there. Some of them are teacher perspectives, but some of them are sort of more grounded in and underpinned by research evidence. That's a very useful point to start, really.